ultimately our mission is to make caregiving a more valued profession. Caregivers work very hard, and we know there's a shortage. At Caribou, we have a very small C-level team, and we don't have a CTO or CMO, but we have a CPO, right? I have found that the voice of product is increasingly important to the business. We're all customer driven. Can we agree to that? Even if you're product driven, you should be building something your customers want. And how are you going to know that if you're not talking to the sales team and talking to your customers? Product management in 2025, I think it's, at the end of the day, still the glue. I don't buy into the CEO of the product thing. In some cases, I find like we still need, I don't know, is it 6 months or a year for the AI to be less like 80-20 and more usable? Because in the product, you can't have half-baked user experiences. It has to work all the time.
Good afternoon. Today I have with me the Chief Product Officer of Caribou Rewards, Christine Dupuis. It is such a pleasure to meet you, and I want to just start by saying congratulations on being a finalist in this year's top CPO. Why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your company and your journey.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. So as you mentioned, I'm CPO at Caribou right now. We partner with home care agencies to help them recruit, retain, and recognize their caregivers. So ultimately, our mission is to make caregiving a more valued profession. Caregivers work very, very hard. And we know there's a shortage and that with a population that's aging. So our way of solving that problem is really equipping the agency to be the best possible employer. And that's a culture that we live through in and out of the company, that recognition and rewards culture. So it's been a great journey. And in terms of how I got here, I think similarly to most product managers, a bit of a random walk there, but with my underlying values and some things that's been really consistent for me. So I'll start back in school. People always ask me, what did you study? So I think that's kind of interesting. I studied engineering, and then I went into math. So pure hardcore masters in math because I liked the idea that there's a real answer out there. You can mathematically model your environment and come to the right answer. So you can already see me coming that I love scoring opportunities and thinking about opportunity costs and these kind of things. And I was already doing that from a very young age. I'm also very generalist, curious, open minded. So after I was done my degree, I was very worried that I would end up too specialized or like too narrow into some kind of field. So I stumbled upon McKinsey, the management consulting firm, and I thought, what a great idea to learn, have great impact, and also remain a generalist and see what's out there. So I was in Montreal at the time. And then McKinsey life being the consulting life, I started to travel around the world. And wow, did I realize Montreal is a small city.
It sure
Montreal is
is.
a small city when you start
Yeah.
working in New York and Chicago and all these cities. So that made me want to move out of Montreal and launch my career in the US. So after a couple of years at McKinsey, I moved to Washington, D.C., and that was a huge move for me to go and live in a different country, in a different language, being a Francophone speaker. And I had this worldview where I wanted to change the world. I wanted to make the world a better place. So I went to DC and I worked with a nonprofit startup in the education space. So if you think startups don't have a lot of resources or nonprofit don't have a lot of resources, try a nonprofit startup. It made me realize just how like we can do things with very little resources. And I was trying to meet, I was coming out of McKinsey trying to hit that standard with very little. And it is doable. And you'll see in my path that I've stayed with the startups quite a bit because I like that tangible impact. But the
I
company was low on resources, and I did want to do something also. As the engineer in me likes to build things, right? So the McKinsey work is more strategic. You're making slides, you're putting processes into place, and that lacked like the tangible aspect that I had when I was creating algorithms and really working on hard problems in school. So I moved across the country from DC to San Francisco, and I worked at Google. And that is where all my skills came together. I was analyzing user data, making compelling presentations to the product team, telling them, here's what you should do, here's what the users are saying. we need to change these settings. We need to change the default values in AdWords. We need to do more of this on Google Maps. It was fascinating. And also, that's where I learned all about product management because as an external person to the product management team, you're saying things like, I have data. We should absolutely do this. This is a big user problem. And then you hear the classic, we'll put it in the backlog, or that's not the strategy right now, or, whatever reason. So it made me quite intrigued. And I said, you know what? I think I would enjoy being that person who looks at all the information and makes these decisions. I tapped into my network of Google friends who were PMs, and I studied it. Maybe it sounds like very trivial right now, but I studied quite hard. I had to go back and learn some technical skills and computer science skills. And after a year of studying, I passed my product manager interview, which to this date still feels like one of my most important accomplishments because product is my home now. It's my natural, like it's so natural for me. I love it. I love thinking and talking to customers and the strategic work and the building and the impact, the users who use it. It's like everything that I love doing. So yeah, I learned at Google. I worked on Google Maps at first, and then on Sign In with Google, which is a product. It looks like a tiny box where you sign in. It's a very important product.
No, it's a very important product. I use it every day.
So it's got to work. There's all sorts of ways to retrieve your password now. So I did that for a couple of years, and then being born in Montreal, I had to make a decision whether I'm going to live in Montreal or live in the US and become an American citizen. So I eventually moved back home, and I've been here now for 6 years back in Montreal, just trying to be the best possible advocate for the tech companies here and the product community here because it was, I'm not going to surprise anybody by saying Montreal's a little behind the Bay Area, right, in terms of product management and tech companies. So it's been so rewarding to come back with all these learnings and how we were doing things in big companies like Google. Google also operates a bit like a startup, to be honest. It's very decentralized. So coming back to Montreal and being able to contribute here to our ecosystem with startups, where I find in startups is where you find the most authentic product management. So now I've worked on an ad exchange. I worked on an AI chatbot, which had a successful exit. We got acquired by Hootsuite, and now at Caribou in the health space. So
Amazing. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Caribou does?
yeah, so we work with home care agencies to recruit caregivers, retain them, and make them feel recognized. So it's an app for the caregiver. There's an admin portal for the agency to set up the program, and for the caregiver, the experience is they receive a welcome video upon onboarding, and if they watch it, they get a few points for that, and then if they have a streak of clocking in and out on time, like they'll get points for that too. And then they redeem those points for rewards. They can send notes to each other to say, hey, thanks. You've been really helpful. You filled my shift that I couldn't take. Or, yeah, we just try to be their platform for their community and their sense of being recognized for all the work they do with their patients.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So you've obviously been in a plethora of countries and roles over your career. So you've really um, have had kind of a unique view in kind of the role of the head of products. So tell us a little bit about how you've seen the role morph and change over the various years.
Yeah, one thing I'm noticing a lot, which I'm sure you have as well, is just how increasingly there's room at the C-level table for the product voice. At Caribou, we have a very small C-level team, and we don't have a CTO or CMO but we have a CPO, right? So um, I I have found that the voice of product is increasingly important to the business. We're seeing more product-led companies and more product culture. And by product culture, I mean the way we make decisions, right? A smaller, less risky decision, fast, iterate, learn. These are great principles for any business if you think about it, not just for product managers and for building SaaS and apps. So that's a change that I've noticed. Even in the work that I do here in Montreal now, I get calls from banks with a whole bunch of POs, and they want to change the POs into product managers. Like there's increasingly that talk of product that I've definitely noticed. Um, and I think also maybe this is more personal to my trajectory rather than a change in the CPO role. But I've certainly had to learn to work on a different level and let go of a lot of day to day stuff and focus more on the market. Like where is the industry going? What does my client believe today? And how does that support a purchasing decision of my product or not? And if there are certain gaps, then how can I bridge that gap on the market and in the industry? So it's slightly different work because you're sort of timing your innovation and your product with where the market is at, and trying to get that timing right is very different from being internal and sort of organizing the sprints. And I mean, I still do a bunch of design reviews, but that's just because I like it.
Yeah. Hi, this is Renee Niemi, Resident Chief Product Officer at Products Account. We're taking a quick break to chat with a friend of the show, Mighty Capital. GP of Mighty Capital, SC Mawadi, is here with me. SC, for listeners who don't know yet, what makes your approach different?
We're a product first venture firm, so we back enterprise founders where product is the growth engine. Our edge is what we call the CPO alpha effect, which is a data backed framework that helps us source, diligence, and help companies scale faster. That's how we backed category winners like Amplitude, Airbnb, Grok, and more.
Yeah, and the results speak for themselves. You celebrated your sixth IPO with Netscope recently, right?
We're so proud of the founders. And you're right, the goal is compounding product excellence. So over time, about 1 in 5 of our companies becomes an outlier.
Yeah, and you don't just write a check either.
Right. We plug teams into product, design partners, and our CPO fellows who roll up their sleeves on roadmap, pricing, and go to market so that teams hit milestones faster and raise on better terms.
So, if I'm a founder building a B2B product, how do I engage?
Well, email me at sc@mighty.capital or message me on LinkedIn or X, and I'm happy to connect.
Awesome. Love it. Learn more at mighty.capital. Now, back to the show.
Yeah. Well, 100%. Like, because if you're not worried about what's next, then nobody else is going to be. I loved your point about the focus on um, the voice in the C-suite, and I want to spend a second on that because one of the things that we have really noted at Products Account, because we track the role of the CPO and have done over the last 5 years or so. And what we're really starting to see is the impact of the business decisions. I would say, well, gosh, now we're going way back. But when I was a chief product officer, I mean, we were responsible for determining the product and the product roadmap and all things product. Where we stopped short was the broader view of the business. And
Mhm.
today, I will say that what I see with most chief product officers like yourself is that we're starting to see the CPO really take that bigger voice in the future of the business. Because it's not just about the product. Does that change our route to market? Does that change how we charge for it? Does that change how we support it? Like every decision you make impacts every aspect of business.
For sure. Like we've been having discussions very recently between SMB and enterprise. And are we partnering? Are we building a bunch of APIs? Are we building this internal? Who do we want to be? What parts are we going to be really excellent at? What are we leaving to others? How does our product play nice with the other parts of the ecosystem? And that's huge. And the more clarity you have on that, the faster you build. Because the less, like, if your vision is clear and I've done a good job as a CPO of clarifying that for my team, then day to day they're not hesitant and like, oh, should we integrate here? Or wait, what did we say? Oh, is that important information? Should we have it in our product? Yes or no? And then it becomes each micro decision becomes much bigger than it needs to be. So for sure, huge impact on the business. I very much agree with that.
Yeah. I also think that the the CPO is a critical decision maker. Like when you're looking at go to market, and especially if you're looking to pivot go to market, there's a huge opportunity to potentially build some of those pieces into the product and become more efficient. So it just all kind of snowballs into that to that whole broader conversation that the CPO has. I think that's a really great segue, and I'm going to ask you this next question. I would love it in context of your current role, and then we're going to have like a really fun conversation around it. So my question for you is your current company culture, would you consider it to be sales centered, finance centered, or product centered? And then just explain which one you think it is and why.
Okay. I'm going to say product centered, because of those principles that I was describing in the previous question, where I'm saying I think there's a way of thinking and creating businesses that is the product thinking of, are we building this once for a significant group of people? Do we have product market fit? So I would say we operate in that way a lot. In theory, on paper, I would have to say sales led, because currently we don't have a fully self serve product onboarding. But we do try to make. I mean, it's a matter of time. We do try to make product do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of getting the customer started and showing the value, and just in how we make our decisions. I do want to say, however, whenever we talk about sales driven, product driven, there's something that drives me a little crazy in the back of my mind. Like, we're all customer driven. Can we agree to that? And just saying it's product driven, like, I'm still talking to my customers. And so in APM Montreal, in the training program that I ran, sometimes people are like, oh, but it was like a request from sales and we're product driven, so I don't want to do it. And it's like, well, wait a minute, there's something wrong here, because even if you're product driven, you should be building something your customers want. And how are you going to know that if you're not talking to the sales team and talking to your customers? So
Amen. Amen. I am so glad you said that because, and I'm just going to double down on that for a second, because when you start to think about, sales, frankly, and finance and customer all want and product all want happy customers, because that makes that makes a good, robust business. The the thing that might be different is the lens. And what I mean by that is the time horizons. Say a little bit more about that. What are the
yeah,
pressures, or do you feel pressures
I
that are
love,
different?
oh my God, do I feel pressure every day? I thrive for that pressure. We have a roadmap. So I try to have a vision as clear as possible for the team. We are a fast growing company. So, of course, the type of people we have on board are very well adjusted to thriving in ambiguity and living with those changes. But I try to set the vision, and things are on the roadmap at some point in the year. So what will happen typically is the sales team calls in and say, hey, I've got this huge prospect. They really care about this thing. I see it's in September. I want to launch in April. What are the chances you can do it in the next 6 weeks? Right. So we do a fair bit of that. And I love to be in those discussions. And I find that if you do it well with enough transparency, both to the sales team to set expectation with the customer and internally, it really motivates people. Because what else, like, how more motivating can it get to have a feature ready on time for customer launch and it was already on the roadmap? It's not even a detour. It's not even like a thing that, like, we were going to do this thing anyway. And now we have the chance of being able to co-design it with a customer, get their input, and try it right away. So
I
I think
love
when
that.
framed nicely, you can sort of use the sales led to accelerate your product led, if that makes sense.
I love it. I love the way you're turning lemons into lemonade. But as you know, it doesn't always happen that way. And so talk to me at this, and this is the last double click on this topic, but talk to me how that affects planning. Like when you start to think about annual planning, how does your planning process start? And do you think that's because you're product centered or because you're sales centered? Like talk to me about how your planning process works in that context.
Our Our yearly planning is very, very loosely defined in the sense that I don't think there's a lot of value in having very detailed roadmap for 2 or 3 years down the line. So they're more like horizons. We're winning in this space that then enables us to win in this other space. So, for example, at Caribou, now we're focused on caregiver engagement and caregiver recognition. But once we have that, now we have an audience of actively engaged caregivers. So how are we going to utilize that? And we have the agencies. So we have other horizons like a job marketplace, some affiliate marketing to the caregivers. Those are other longer term planning items. And your question was, how do we balance basically planning and yearly planning and short term? So um, we have triggers in our plan that are, until we reach X million in ARR or X thousand of customers, like we're really focused on this play, or until we see this kind of acceleration. So we can have certain metrics of success for each of our horizons and decide when it's time to move over. But I will say, in reality, it is really messy. And if we go to a conference, it happened just before the holidays. I went to a conference and I met a customer that's in a slightly adjacent vertical. They're not in home care. Um, they're at home visits, but with a more specialized workforce. We do more like untrained caregivers. So it's not quite the same. They don't have the same hourly wage. So rewards don't mean as much maybe to them. And there's a number of differences. But we have in our horizons to open up to new verticals. So this opportunity is here now because I know that's coming eventually down the pipeline. Maybe I'll put like 5% of effort into that deal and just see, like, are we ready? Oh, not quite, and that's what happened with this specific prospect. They said, you know what, I see where you're going, fantastic work, call me back in a few months where you're closer to. But I wouldn't know that if I didn't have the conversation. Maybe they would have said, you know what, let's try Caribou the way it is now. I feel like it could work. So I'm coming back to that transparency of, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm going. We can do it together, we can learn together. And I think there's a lot of value for the whole team and for the customers in doing that. They'd get, that customer would have essentially been the first to have a solution like this in their space, because we don't exist in those verticals yet. Neither do our competitors. So
Yeah. Wow. I love the way you're thinking about this. All right. I'm going to shift gears for you. And let's talk about product management as a function. And give me your vision. What is product management 2025?
oh my goodness, that's a very big question. Product management in 2025. I think it's at the end of the day still the glue. I don't buy into the CEO of the product thing. I don't know who started that. Maybe that's controversial. I think it's the glue. And when I'm hiring, I'm looking for people who have strategic thinking skills, who are data driven, good communicators, open to feedback. Because my goodness, you get a lot of feedback from everybody who think you should have that feature, or the product should do this or that. So I try to find generalists with the right strategic skills, and I think those people are naturally curious and driven, and they are the kind of people who figure things out. That's what product management is. At the end of the day, I have a user, they have a problem, I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to build the thing they need. So I don't know, it's a very original answer, but I don't think it's changed that much. It's still being the glue. It's still knowing the customer. It's still solving the problems. It's still optimizing for the team's velocity. Those are the core skills.
So, how does AI play into that? How is that going to change, or has that changed the role of product management?
Well, AI is quite the accelerator. There's not one day I don't use AI, and my team as well. Probably also, we have a lot, like, we're in a unique position. You're in a growing company, it's a startup, you have to go faster than everybody else. You are heavily incentivized to find any possible shortcut. Our developers use AI tools to help them code faster and whatnot. It's just, I know in some larger environments there's more IT restrictions and you can't always use all the tools that you want. So I think we're sort of on the front of the adoption curve. I learn things from people on my team every day, like, oh, you can use it. I thought I was a good AI user, and they're always sort of showing me new things that they're doing.
Amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing. And we share, like, on our team Slack, like, people, oh, I just did this today, and I tried throwing in all of this into generative AI, and this is what it gave me. It's pretty good, and like it's part of our day-to-day conversation. So very, it's a good helper. It's a good accelerator. When it comes to using it in the product, I'm still a little, I wouldn't say AI skeptical. That's not the right word, but I don't think AI is ready. Like 80/20 is good. I wouldn't use that, if I'm trying to do, we have a new feature we're trying to work on where we would predict the caregiver churn for the agency. Like, hey, this caregiver at risk of churn. I actually get better results by using the rules of how they've responded in their past surveys and how many hours they work and sort of determining the answer of their level of risk. I can do faster and better with that than like creating an AI model for that. That's not always going to get it right. Sorry. So, in some cases, I find like we still need, I don't know, is it 6 months or a year for the AI to be less like 80/20 and more usable? Because in the product, you can't have half baked user experiences. It has to work all the time. So, I haven't used it as much as I would like inside Caribou, but definitely part of our day to day and how we operate for sure.
Amazing. Well, fast rewind to the beginning of our conversation, and you commented that you got your start in math and that you were very math minded. That you're all about the score, like scoring things. So this next question is right up your alley. But how do you think about metrics and what in specific a product when you hold your team accountable? What is the most important metric to you?
Right. I think it changes over time in the life cycle of the product. Right now, I'm heavily focused on engagement with the team. And the reason for that is because we initially gained a lot of bigger agencies where we did really well on the sales side and then implemented the app. And you can imagine for a successful renewal conversation, you need to have high caregiver engagement with the app so you can attribute all those, better clock in, more billable hours, better retention, more referrals. We want to be able to attribute all those things to Caribou. So the minimum we need is some kind of interaction with Caribou to claim that the correlation is really driven by us. So that's why I'm focused here. But that's not going to be enough, right? I can easily imagine your next question being like, yeah, but just because they came to the app doesn't mean you're actually having that impact. So that's why I'm layering it like this, because if I start today with the team and say we've got to optimize for retention of caregivers, there's a risk here that we wouldn't necessarily do it through the product and through our solution, but we try to sort of shortcut to optimize this metric. And I want to do it through engagement with the app. I also want to make sure that if we start optimizing, we use offers inside the app. That's how caregivers make points. I'm going to start asking the team to optimize conversion on offers. I want to make sure there's a decent amount of eyes on there. So I like to change the North Star every 6 months to a year, roughly, in our timeline. But for now, it's engagement. And the next one is going to be retention and billable hours. And the team knows that. So they're optimizing for engagement, but sort of knowing what's coming next as well.
There was a couple things I want to just highlight in what you
Really
said. First
long
of all,
answer, I'm realizing. Sorry.
no, it was great because I feel like measuring our work is one of the hardest things, and you know that old adage, you get what you measure. So highlighting it, focusing, I think are all really, really good things. I work with some CPOs that are measuring 20 things, and I often coach them going, listen, if you measure 20, then they spread their attention across 20. Like, what are the ones that's going to move the needle for you today? Right.
Yeah.
And I love how you're thinking about that. I also love how you are building the ROI model into your product and how you're measuring it, right? Because you're spot on. If your ROI is not there, your customers will churn. And so I like the way you're thinking about that and building that into your metrics and how you're holding the team accountable. So I can tell you're a math major. All right. Next question for you is, we all know that great teams are so important to CPO success. And the best CPOs that I've had the pleasure of meeting over the years are those who can build and organize great talent. Give me some of your thoughts on how to hire and retain amazing PM leaders.
I will disclaim I am super spoiled in this department because I went through McKinsey and through Google, and I think they are hiring powerhouses. They have this process down to the science, and I learned very early on. And also being in startups, this is what I do for a living. I hire people, I grow team. So I've had a lot of trial and errors, maybe I can say that, and a lot of inspiration to work from. What I find works best is the investigator mindset. I'm a journalist. I'm not trying to decide. I have 45 minutes with this person. You know, people who are like, oh, I decide in 5 seconds. Like, that doesn't matter. I'm trying to find evidence. I've got 45 minutes to find evidence that this person is all the things we said. Are they data driven? Are they strategic? Are they open to feedback? And it's not that hard to get there if I have really simple questions. I'll give you an example. I'll ask a product leader, like, tell me how you grew your product. Really, really simple. And then I listen. Do they start by telling me how they fixed a bunch of stuff? If they jump to that too quickly, that's okay. But I'm wearing my journalist hat. I'm like, well, why did you pick that? And I'm expecting some kind of, oh yeah, because we have that metric. And so I call that a tier 2 answer. Tier 1 answer is, I started from this metric. I knew I was going to do this. Tier 2 is, I prompted you and then you remembered you had data. A candidate that fails this question will say, because so and so wanted it, or because, and it doesn't mean there wasn't any data. It just means that when I asked this person why, the first thing that came to mind was a different reason than because of the data. So they're signaling to me that they are not primarily data driven. And I know, like, I'm just 5 minutes in my interview and I know if they're data driven or not. And so next thing, again, like, then I'll challenge them. They did something and I say, well, why didn't you do this thing instead? Or if it was me, I might have thought of that. I just challenge them. Do they get defensive? Are they open to feedback? Are they saying, that is interesting? Well, in that context, it wouldn't have worked, but I can see how, or if they're like, no, but we were, and they get all like defensive and worried. So things like that. And people who say it's hard because they can just say whatever they want. Well, I don't think that's true. It's behavioral in this context. I'm talking to you about something you did and I'm asking you why you made those decisions. You can't really pretend. And you don't really know why I'm asking. So you don't even know that I'm trying to see if you're data driven or not. So that's worked really well. I have like 5 or 6 go-to questions that are very simple and very broad, but I know exactly what I'm looking for. And at the end, I have a scorecard and I try to not be biased. That's very difficult, of course, but I try to remove all bias. And the Google way, you give a score and you have to give 2 examples. So I give this person on receptivity to feedback 3 out of 5 because one time I said this and they responded well, and then the other time I said that and they got defensive. So it's sort of more
Why does it not surprise me that your answer had math in it?
Well, I think it's too risky. I've done this in the beginning a lot. You hire somebody who feels comfortable and you're like, we really vibed, or they're a friend of a friend, they're from my network. That's I mean, sometimes it works well, you're lucky, but sometimes it doesn't. And that's a really biased hiring. So that
Yeah.
evidence-based approach, I think, is really key. And if you're giving somebody 45 minutes to give you evidence that they can achieve a job, I don't think you should decide after 5 minutes based on how they introduce themselves on that day.
You know what? I think there's a really good nugget in there, and anybody listening should like be writing this down, right? Create your own scorecard and make sure it's evidence based, and don't leave it to how you feel after the interview. Look at the scorecard, right? Because feelings don't deliver results.
Indeed. They're really hard discussions after the fact when you got to tell your friend's friend that you hired that actually, they can't really do the job. It's, you
Yeah,
exactly.
I love that. I want to transition. I have to I have to confess I did a little bit of stalking, a little bit of homework on you, and I could tell that you're very passionate about the field of PM. Looks like you really stepped up and in the Montreal community. And so tell us a little bit about APM, that you, which is an organization that you founded with their mission. What's the origin story there?
Thank you for asking that question. I love talking about APM Montreal. When I moved back from California and I came to Montreal, I was telling people like, "Hey, I'm from Google. I'm a product manager. Like, give me a job." And people were like, "You're a what? A product manager? Or is that like a Scrum Master or like a PO?" And I was like, "No, no, no, like product management." And God, like people they didn't know, and I remember feeling like, oh, I got to do something about this, like we're really missing out. And I happened to have a friend at the time who is also an investor, who had heard about APM Toronto, who run a similar program, and he wanted to start it in Montreal. And we're like, okay, we can do this. It's a training program. I should have started with that. The mission is to make product management accessible for people of all backgrounds. And the problem we're solving for is that catch 22, where you sort of have to be a PM to become a PM. It's very hard to get into the profession. And so we believe that because of this, you're more at an advantage if you're a part of a privileged network where people are already product managers. And so we're leaving out a lot of talent that would be highly skilled for product management and would increase the performance of the product team by bringing in a whole different view. We see that we're talking about AI before, how the algorithm, the models are all super biased because they're all built by the same type of people. So we started from this mission of like, let's make product management more accessible, more democratic. And we built APM stands for Associate Product Manager. So it's an entry level training, very focused on diversity. But what's very nice about it is that the people who teach are volunteers, and they're all my peers. So we have a group of mentors, which is wonderful. So we have about like 35 mentors who are essentially all the VP and up product people in Montreal who, or in the 15 weeks program, the APM comes to the 15 classes, but because there's a whole bunch of us, we each give one class. So it's not too much of a lift. And the group of APMs, they get to meet all the leaders in Montreal. They get a class taught by each one of them on a different topic. And they get to hear there's no right or wrong in product. You're doing just fine.
Wow.
And, this is the stuff that you can read online. Here's how I use it in my day to day. It's not always like that. And it's just, we're on 5 years now. The APMs love it, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. So I'm super excited. I'm thinking like, okay, do we need like a second year training, a director training? Like, what else do we need? So I've just
I
started
love
to look into
it.
it. Yeah.
I love it. How many graduates do you have of the program so far?
We're at 62 something, and we've got 18 this cohort. So we're going to be reaching 80 in June when they graduate.
That's amazing. Are you tracking their careers?
I've started to do that a little. Yeah. We don't have great tracking from our first cohort because we're a little bit more disorganized. But we're
Startup.
doing yearly, yeah, indeed. This is like a community program, so it's like not even a startup. But we do annual alumni events where we bring in everybody from all the past cohorts and all the mentors, and it's so nice. And now there's people. 5 years ago, there's people in there who are director, head of product in companies now, and it's just so nice that they were in APM. And product management is a thing now in Montreal. You have a whole Quebec side of product that counts here. And so, yeah, it's been really nice to be part of that.
Well, someone who is super passionate about the field of product management, I thank you. It's a really interesting model. I often speak with product leaders in Europe and Asia who are also dealing with this lag, especially
Yeah.
at the C level, in the field of product management. And there's maybe some good ideas there that they can pick up on and run with in their particular regions.
I would be happy
Uh,
to talk to anybody who wants to start a similar program. Just reach out. No problem at all.
oh,
I hope I didn't put myself in trouble
yay.
by saying that.
I hope so. I will also keep that in mind because I
Of
can
course.
think of a couple that might be interested.
Definitely.
All right. So then, another one that question that I have, I noticed that you obviously made a fairly large jump. You've got McKinsey experience, Google experience, like really big company chops. and then woo, you ended up as a CPO in a startup. So talk to us a little bit about how you made that transition, what pieces you brought with you, which pieces you had to let go of or recreate. Yeah, share with us
Yeah,
that journey.
I really like that question. You know, something I learned about myself throughout my career is I really like having a lot of autonomy and flexibility and control over my work. And that's something I discovered early on. I would get very frustrated with some decisions at Google that felt like too high up for me to influence and such things. So, um, knowing ourselves is just so important because we each have our own path. And for me, I know that I'm happier in a smaller company where I control my environment than a bigger company where I have more orders to take from people, more stakeholders, more things to do in that regard in terms of like managing the, I don't know if we should call it like the politics or the relationships. I What I like in a small company is half of my time is still building with the team. If I wasn't a bigger company, I eventually be so far removed from the team, I'd just be, talking to the board or to other C levels. So I found my fit there, but not on purpose, really, if I'm honest. Really, as I said earlier, I came back to Montreal after Google and I didn't find a big, well, first of all, I didn't say this. I mean, nobody, like, I tried to bring my Google job back to Montreal and they said no. I was like, I'll keep my job. I'll just go work out of Montreal. And they were like, no, we're not going to do that.
I know you don't
So,
think so.
yeah. So
Those,
I was a bit like, well, what do I do now? Like, I made it sound like, oh, I successfully landed in startups, but that was after a lot of questioning of what am I going to do? And did I do the right thing of coming back? And maybe I should have stayed. And, so there was a lot of uncertainty around that decision. But I really found, as much as I love product management as my function, I have found my home in fast growing companies where I feel both that everything that I do matters. I never spend time on something that like slides for somebody who's not going to read them. You don't have that kind of time in the startup. So it's stressful in a way because everything you do feels so like it's always a mini fire or some kind of emergency, but it's also very meaningful. So I guess I'm more driven by that kind of work than a different kind of work. And I sort of lost track. Your question was how did I do that? I guess sort
yeah,
of
the
not on
transition.
purpose.
No, you gave a great answer. And it sounds like it was, a little bit accidental, but it was a good. I used to call these like grateful mistakes or
Pretty
grateful
much.
accidents.
I when people talk about, I have career discussions with a lot of people all the time, especially women. I love mentoring and coaching, and we talk about these things, and it's like the product philosophy again. I'm going to use that, but apply it to your life. Your career is your product. Like, what would you do in product? You wouldn't go and plan a whole year. You would do maybe a sprint or an MVP version of that feature and iterate and learn on that. So um, I try a lot of things. I've tried, through APM, I'm trying teaching. Maybe one day I want to be a full time teacher. I don't know. I'm enjoying teaching, but I'm trying it on a small scale with APM. At Google, I didn't say this, but I tried a 20% project with the product team before investing and studying and moving over. So running tests can take you a really good chunk of the way, and you might actually realize the thing you think you want maybe isn't the thing you want that much. So yeah, I don't know.
I
I just
love
tried a lot of
that.
stuff until I found what I really like.
Treat your career like it's a product.
It is, isn't it? Like as a CPO, my product is my team and the team culture that I'm building.
I
It's
love it.
yeah, I like to apply those. I find those concepts work really well on a lot of things. Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Um, Thank you for all of those great answers. This is the fun part. We're just going to do a couple quick answers, quick questions, quick answers. Um, let's go. All
Okay,
right.
I'm
So
ready.
the first one is what makes a great product leader?
Um, Great communication and ability to give and receive feedback.
Oh, I love it. Kind of that growth mindset, right?
Hmm.
Love it. Okay. What is your favorite tool and why? And when I say tool, it's product tool.
I, I mean, you mean I use it in my work, right? Like I,
Yes,
I'm
please.
going to be very, like, I'm going to disappoint so many people. I'm a huge notes, docs kind of person. I find they work so well. And I like to use the most simple thing I can find to do the thing I'm trying to do. And oftentimes, like, I mean, Notion, Slack, there's a lot of great tools out there, but they're overpowered. And most times I just need to take notes for myself to remember later. And I have a whole system with my notes and I manage all my to-dos this way. And I don't need much more.
Well,
I
that's
just need more and
amazing. So you basically created your own products with the product or process or workflow within. Do you use Microsoft or Google?
we use Google at work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I have my notepad, and if I need to come back to something, I link it over, and I don't know, it works. I don't need anything else. People are like, oh, you should try this, try that. I'm like,
I
just sounds
love
like
it.
extra
I love
work.
it. I do the same thing. I use Evernote, but it's
Oh
not
yeah,
overly complicated and
yeah. It works
everything's in
for
one
what I
spot.
need. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
maybe that's
I love it.
what did we say, the the shoemaker with the bad shoes. Like, is that an expression you would say in English?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I know exactly what you're talking about, though. All right. What are you reading right now?
I read a lot of really different stuff. Like I'll read like a cooking book, or I read recently a Buddhist principle book that I thought was really helpful. It talked about letting go. And one of my favorite books of all time, I'll give her a plug because I really like this author, is Roxane Gay. Bad Feminist was a book I really enjoyed that I just read before that. So
Ooh,
I'm an
gonna
avid
have to
reader.
put that. Gonna have to put that one on my list. All right. Last question is, who do you follow and why?
Oh, we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording the interview. How it's hard from a network perspective sometimes to find other CPOs or feel part of that
Yeah.
community. So actually, I found a different solution for myself. I follow women in other industries who I find are really inspiring. So um, Sally Krawcheck in finance.
Mhm.
Very famous Jenny Stojkovic in VC, which I'm sure you've heard of, Cindy Gallup in marketing. So they're really innovators and they're women figures. So I can sort of relate to them and see, okay, what are they doing that works for me? What can I borrow from their style? And how can I apply that over in product? So they're
I
sort of
love,
yeah.
I love that, and I love that it wasn't a canned answer. I appreciate that. So, listen, Christine, I have just loved this conversation. Thank you so much for your well thought out and truly authentic answers. It's just really been a fun conversation.
Thank you so much for your great questions. And yeah, thanks.